You are listening to the Pregnancy Podcast with Vanessa Merton. Hello. Thank you for tuning into the Pregnancy Podcast. In today's episode, we're talking about sun safety during pregnancy. Sunlight comes with benefits and risks, and pregnancy actually adds a few extra considerations to both. Some of the upside is real. Your body makes vitamin D from sunlight. There's evidence that sun can lift your mood. And getting exposure to sunlight at the right times of day can even help your sleep. But on the other side of that, UV light damages DNA in your skin cells, which raises your risk of skin cancer and speeds up aging. Pregnancy hormones can also change your skin and how it reacts to the sun. So this episode will go through sun safety during pregnancy so that you can enjoy the benefits while protecting yourself and your baby. Find out how to pick a pregnancy-safe sunscreen, what to know about tanning beds and sunless tanners, and what's considered safe sun exposure for your newborn. You can find the full article and all of the resources for this episode at pregnancypodcast.com/sun. Every episode I make, like this one on sun exposure, starts with dozens of hours of digging through research so that you don't have to. And premium members get all of it, ad-free, plus a free copy of the Your Birth Plan book. There are hundreds of premium-only episodes with evidence-based information you won't find anywhere else. Check it out at pregnancypodcast.com/premium. Zoller goes above and beyond in formulating their prenatal plus DHA. They use high-quality ingredients like the active form of folate, bioavailable iron, and essential nutrients like omega-3s. Zoller always has an exclusive promo code running for listeners of the Pregnancy Podcast, and you can always see that at pregnancypodcast.com/vitamin. VTech is the #1 baby monitor brand in North America and trusted by millions of families. The VTech VM5266 baby monitor has a 5-inch color screen. You can pan, tilt, and zoom from the parent unit, and sound-activated soothing. It's available at Target. Check it out at pregnancypodcast.com/VTech. 8 Sheep Organics makes amazing 100% clean, natural pregnancy products. From skincare to treating common symptoms like stretch marks with clinically proven ingredients, 8 Sheep Organics has you covered. Every product comes with a 100-day happiness guarantee. Try it risk-free. If you're not 100% happy with your purchase, simply send them an email and they'll get you a refund, no questions asked. Check out 8 Sheep Organics and save 10% when you go to pregnancypodcast.com/8sheep. Some of the light that the sun emits is ultraviolet radiation. This is a type of electromagnetic radiation, and the Earth's atmosphere filters out much of it, including all UVC. The UV that reaches the surface is roughly 95% UVA and about 5% UVB. You need UVB to make vitamin D, but UVA, on the other hand, contributes to skin damage and premature aging. Even when you're indoors, exposure matters. UVB rays do not pass through glass, but UVA rays do. That means that to get the benefits of sunlight, like vitamin D, you need direct sun, not filtered through a window. At the same time, you're still getting some of that aging UVA exposure if you're sitting by a sunny window, even though you can't make vitamin D there. So you want to be outside. The UV index measures the strength of UV radiation on a scale from 0 to 11. The higher the number, the stronger your exposure. UV radiation peaks around solar noon, typically between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. So as a result, going outside earlier or later in the day can significantly reduce your exposure. You can find the UV index for your area in any kind of weather app. There's also a few other factors that increase UV levels. UV tends to be higher in the summer if you're closer to the equator, at higher altitudes, and on clear days. In addition, reflective surfaces like snow or water actually reflect UV back at you, so you're still getting exposure even when you're sitting in the shade. Sunlight is not bad, and I don't want you to be scared of it. We're naturally meant to spend time in the sunshine. The most well-established benefit of that is vitamin D production. But beyond that, sunlight has a big effect on your mood. In a study that measured brain chemistry, researchers found that serotonin production in the brain actually increased with the amount of bright sunlight on a given day. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that's tied to feelings of well-being, so more daylight can translate into a better mood. Sunlight also helps your sleep. Getting natural light at key times, like around sunrise or when you first wake up, can actually help set your circadian rhythm. That influences your internal clock, which tells your body when to feel alert and when to wind down. So daytime light exposure actually helps you sleep better at night. There may be more benefits of sunlight during pregnancy, but the evidence here is a little bit weaker. One review of 17 studies found that more UV exposure in the first trimester was associated with improved fetal growth. But that same review found a link between higher first trimester UV and higher blood pressure during pregnancy. The studies behind this were observational and at a high risk of bias. And as you can see, results were a little bit mixed. The practical takeaway here is that there are good reasons to get some sun, and there's also reasons not to overdo it. One of the biggest upsides of sunlight is vitamin D. Approximately 90% of our vitamin D comes from the sun. When UVB rays hit your skin, it triggers a reaction that converts it into active forms that you can use throughout your body. Vitamin D matters a lot in pregnancy, and deficiency is really common among expecting moms. It's been linked to a higher risk of preeclampsia, higher odds of a primary cesarean, and can even affect children later in life. There is an episode with a deep dive on vitamin D that talks about how much you need, how widespread that deficiency is, and I will link to that in the article for this episode. How much vitamin D you make from the sun depends on a lot of variables. Where you live, the season, the time of day, how much skin is exposed. The good news is you can't overdose on vitamin D from the sun. Of course, you could get a sunburn. We will talk about that. The key is to get adequate exposure to get the benefits while minimizing the risks of overexposure. There's several things that happen when UV light hits your skin. I covered that UVB helps you make vitamin D. The downside is that UV light can also damage the DNA in your skin cells. Over time, this can contribute to skin cancer, as well as premature aging, wrinkles, and dark spots. We're meant to be out in the daylight. Some sun exposure is unavoidable, and a reasonable amount is healthy. Thankfully, we also have built-in protection in the form of melanin. Melanin is the natural pigment that gives your skin its color. And how much you make is mostly genetic. The more melanin you produce, the darker your skin is. Melanin also absorbs UV light and shields your cells from some of the damage. So when your skin is exposed to UV light, your melanocytes ramp up melanin production. That's what creates a tan. Of course, it'd be nice if this worked in a perfect balance, but it doesn't. You may like being tan, but you should know that any darkening of your skin reflects some underlying damage, even if you never actually burn. None of this means that you should be afraid of the sun, but you should be taking measures to protect yourself. Pregnancy adds a few considerations to sun exposure. Thankfully, your baby is well protected in your belly. By about week 18, your baby's getting better at sensing light and dark. So if you go outside, they may notice a glow when you're out in the sun. So while your baby is shielded until they're born, the hormonal changes of pregnancy can affect your skin and how sensitive it is to the sun. Many expecting moms notice that their skin is more sensitive during pregnancy. This can show up as redness, swelling, tenderness, or irritation in response to things like different skin products, fabrics, or even sun exposure. Stretch marks are another factor. Stretch marks appear when the supporting tissue beneath your skin stretches and tears during rapid growth. The result is off-color lines that can appear on your breasts, belly, hips, and thighs. They often start out pink or reddish and then fade to a lighter shade than your skin tone over time. Stretch marks don't contain the same amount of melanin as the surrounding skin. So that means after sun exposure, the skin around them will tan while the stretch marks do not. And that can make them stand out more. Melasma is another common skin issue in pregnancy that brings additional considerations for being out in the sun. When you're pregnant, rising estrogen can increase melanin production, and that can drive changes in your skin's pigment. This happens with melasma. Melasma shows up as darker patches of skin, usually on your forehead, cheeks, nose, or upper lip. There's really no way to prevent melasma, but limiting sun exposure can help because the sun tends to darken these patches. Another consideration for sun exposure, in addition to the UV light, is the heat. If you're out in the sun in hot weather, you should be taking steps to avoid overheating, which could potentially lead to hyperthermia. Hyperthermia basically means that your core body temperature has risen too high. And that happens when your body cannot cool itself fast enough to keep up with the heat. When you're pregnant, elevated core temperature is a concern, and that's because it's been linked to neural tube defects, miscarriage, and other complications. And this isn't just theoretical. Research has shown that hot weather and high temperatures can actually increase the risk of stillbirth. Another study linked higher temperatures to lower birth weights, and a meta-analysis of 15 studies found that maternal hyperthermia in early pregnancy is associated with an increased risk of neural tube defects. I don't want you to be afraid of being outside when it's warm out. You just do not want to overheat. So on very hot days, it may be helpful to spend more time indoors if you have access to air conditioning, or to limit your time in direct sunlight. If you are going to be outside for a while, make sure that you dress in cool, light clothing and stick to the shade when you can. You also need more fluids when you're in the heat. So it's important to increase your water intake and stay hydrated. As long as you can cool down and you're not overheating, you and your baby will be fine. I know the heat is unavoidable in a lot of places, especially in the summer. You just want to make sure that you're not getting overheated. Next, let's talk about protecting your skin from the sun. The most simple form of protection is also the most reliable. That's wearing a hat to keep the sun off your face, covering your skin with clothing, or spending time in the shade. You want to be especially mindful when the UV index is high, particularly during peak hours around midday. Then, to protect any skin that you leave exposed, you can apply sunscreen. There's two main types of sunscreen. You have chemical sunscreens, which absorb UV rays and then convert them to heat. And then you have physical or mineral sunscreens that sit on the surface of your skin and deflect UV. Both types work, and the label claims you see things like water resistant, SPF, broad spectrum. Those are all governed by FDA requirements. So let's talk about what SPF and broad spectrum actually means. SPF stands for sun protection factor. This measures how much UV radiation is required to produce a sunburn on protected skin compared to unprotected skin. So to do this, scientists in a laboratory apply sunscreen to a small patch of skin, they expose it to UV light, and then they time how long it takes to turn pink. A common misconception is that SPF tells you how long you can stay out in the sun without burning. SPF is really there so that you can compare products. An SPF of 30 is stronger than an SPF of 15. The American Academy of Dermatology recommends at least SPF 30 that blocks about 97% of UVB rays. No sunscreen blocks 100%. You can go higher than an SPF of 30, but 30 is generally sufficient as long as you're applying enough and you're reapplying it often. On that point, most people are applying far less sunscreen than the amount that is used in testing, which means that they're getting less protection than the SPF on the bottle. Application matters just as much as the number on the bottle of your sunscreen. To get the protection that you're actually paying for, you want to use a generous layer. Plus, you have to reapply at least every 2 hours or more often after swimming or sweating. SPF only tells you about UVB protection. For UVA, you want a broad spectrum sunscreen. And remember, this is important because UVA is the type of UV light that contributes most to skin damage and premature aging. There has been some criticism about sunscreen blocking the production of vitamin D. Remember, an SPF of 30 blocks 97% of UVB rays. Under ideal lab conditions, applied at the thickness that's used in testing, sunscreen with an SPF of 15 blocks most vitamin D production in the skin. In the real world, the effect is probably smaller because most people are applying less sunscreen than is used in lab testing. They're probably missing spots. But because the sun is really the best source of vitamin D, this comes down to balance. Some people may choose to get a few minutes of unprotected sun before applying sunscreen and then covering up for the rest of their time outside. The goal is to get enough exposure to get the benefits without lingering unprotected long enough to get a burn. Next, we're going to talk about lotions versus sprays and sunscreen safety and ingredients, as well as sun safety for your baby. Before we do that, I would like to thank the sponsors that have supported this episode. A lot of companies have exclusive discounts for Pregnancy Podcast listeners, and you can always see discounts and promo codes at pregnancypodcast.com/resources. If you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know that I have done a pile of research on prenatal vitamins and a lot of the components that go into them. You could easily spend hours comparing brands and still not feel sure which one to choose. My number one recommendation for a prenatal vitamin is the Zoller Prenatal Plus DHA. And that's because Zoller goes above and beyond to formulate their vitamin with high quality ingredients, like the active form of folate, bioavailable iron, and essential nutrients like omega-3s. Most prenatal vitamins have folic acid. Zoller uses a body-ready form that doesn't require complex conversion. Why is that important? Well, about half of people have trouble metabolizing folic acid properly. This is just one of the many reasons why this is my top recommendation for a prenatal vitamin. Zoller always has an exclusive promo code running for Pregnancy Podcast listeners, and you can always see that promo code at pregnancypodcast.com/vitamin. When you're trying to get your baby to sleep, every little thing matters. The right sound, a soft light, the ability to soothe them without walking back into the room can make a big difference. And a good baby monitor can actually help with that. The VTech VM5266 video baby monitor is designed with sleep in mind. It has a 5-inch color LCD screen. It lets you pan the camera 270 degrees. You can tilt and zoom from the parent unit so you can check all areas of the room without opening the door. The baby unit has a touch adaptive multicolor nightlight and a sound-activated soothing feature that can automatically turn on a nightlight or projection when your baby stirs. You'll also get lullabies, ambient sounds, two-way talkback intercom, a temperature sensor, automatic infrared night vision, up to 1,000 feet of range, and 17 hours of battery life on the parent unit. This monitor is not Wi-Fi connected, which a lot of parents prefer for privacy and simplicity. VTech is the #1 baby monitor brand in North America and trusted by millions of families. The VTech VM5266 is available at Target. Check it out at pregnancypodcast.com/VTech. Let's get back to today's episode. Sunscreen comes in lotions and sprays, and the type that you choose really affects how well it protects you. Lotions are easy to apply thoroughly, and you can see exactly where you have applied them. That makes it easier to get an even, generous layer. Sprays are super convenient, especially for reapplying or reaching your back, but there's also some drawbacks. One is that it's hard to tell how much you're actually applying, and people tend to apply too little to really achieve the full SPF on the bottle. Wind can also blow a lot of the product away before it's landing on your skin, so that's something to be mindful about if you're applying it outside. If you do use a spray, the guidance is to spray a generous, even coat until your skin glistens, and then to rub it in, rather than just doing a quick mist. If you're going to use a spray on your face, the advice is to spray it onto your hands first and then apply it so that you're not inhaling it or getting it in your eyes. Next, let's talk about sunscreen safety and ingredients. There's been a lot of discussion about the safety of sunscreen ingredients. Remember, there's two main types of sunscreen, chemical and mineral. Chemical sunscreen is absorbed into your skin more than mineral sunscreens. Those mostly stay on the surface. There is evidence that active ingredients in chemical sunscreens, like oxybenzone, are absorbed into the bloodstream. That said, because it's absorbed, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's harm there. In a systematic review of 29 studies, researchers found insufficient evidence of a causal link between oxybenzone and adverse health outcomes. When you're talking about mineral sunscreen, the two main active ingredients are zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. Some expecting moms lean towards mineral sunscreens during pregnancy because they mostly stay on the surface of the skin rather than being absorbed into the bloodstream. The practical bottom line, if you want to keep it simple during pregnancy, a mineral sunscreen with zinc oxide or titanium dioxide is a safe default. Those are the two only active ingredients that the FDA has proposed as generally recognized as safe. Common chemical filters like oxybenzone or avobenzone don't have that same classification. Again, there's not proof of harm there. The FDA simply says that it needs more data on them, and that review has been ongoing for years without a final decision. It really comes down to choosing what you're most comfortable with and finding a product that you like. If you want to dig deeper into specific products, the Environmental Working Group has a website called Skin Deep. They have a free sunscreen guide that may be helpful. The Environmental Working Group suggests avoiding products with oxybenzone and vitamin A. That's listed as retinol palmitate. It's worth knowing that the Environmental Working Group tends to be very conservative. and they often flag ingredients that regulatory agencies still consider safe. Treat the Environmental Working Group guidelines as one cautious opinion, rather than the final word on this. Also, choosing a fragrance-free formula is an easy way to cut back on extra undisclosed ingredients. And that goes not just for sunscreen, but for any products when you're pregnant. Of course, even with taking precautions like using sunscreen, it's possible that you get a sunburn. There's not much research specifically on sunburn during pregnancy. A mild burn is not any kind of reason to panic. For a mild burn, some things that could be helpful are to cool your skin with a cool bath, a shower, or a damp cloth. You should be keeping yourself well hydrated because burns actually draw fluid to the skin surface. And then using a gentle, fragrance-free moisturizer can also help ease that dryness and tightness that comes with a sunburn. Aloe vera is also great for sunburns. It is mostly water, so it hydrates and cools your skin. It can help ease the tightness of a burn. It also contains compounds that have anti-inflammatory properties that can help calm redness and irritation. The research on using aloe for burns is mixed, so think of this as a comforting, moisturizing option rather than something that would dramatically speed healing. If you're choosing an aloe, you want to check the ingredient list rather than just the front of the bottle. You want to look for aloe as the first or second ingredient on that list, and then go for a clear gel rather than something that's blue or green because that just comes from added dyes. It's also worth skipping products that have added alcohol or fragrance. Those can dry out or irritate already sensitive skin. If you get a severe sunburn with blisters or a fever, that's more serious. This is sometimes called sun poisoning. Blisters could potentially become infected, and a fever is a concern during pregnancy. Studies have linked maternal fevers to complications like neural tube defects, oral clefts, congenital heart defects. If you develop a fever, contact your doctor or midwife. In the meantime, you can cool down with a cool, damp washcloth on your forehead, a tepid bath or shower, wearing light clothing. Taking over-the-counter fever reducers is common, but remember to run any medication by your doctor or midwife first, even if it's something available over the counter. Acetaminophen, that's an antipyretic, meaning it's a fever reducer. That's also the active ingredient in Tylenol, has gotten a lot of attention lately regarding its safety in pregnancy. So again, please run it by your doctor or midwife first. The main takeaway here, you want to avoid a severe sunburn. It doesn't feel good, and it also comes with things like fevers or blisters that can pose additional risks. What about other forms of getting a tan besides just being out in the sun? Tanning beds are not safer than sunlight. Like the sun, these emit UV light, mainly UVA. So that means they're not going to do much for vitamin D, but they will contribute to skin damage and premature aging. The World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies tanning beds as carcinogenic. And the WHO has published a detailed report on their risks, with recommendations ranging from improved public education to outright banning them. Bottom line, tanning beds are one of the most dangerous ways to get a tan. As more has come out about the dangers of tanning beds and the harms of UV exposure, sunless tanners have grown in popularity. The active ingredient in these is hydroxyacetone. This is abbreviated DHA. Sometimes it's also called glycerone. It's abbreviated DHA, but don't confuse this with the DHA and omega-3 supplements. Dihydroxyacetone comes from plant sources like sugar beets and sugarcane. When you apply it, it reacts with amino acids on your skin's surface and creates a darkening effect in the outermost cells. This is considered safe for topical use, though it's not been studied extensively in pregnancy. So some dermatologists do suggest exercising caution with it. The Environmental Working Group rates it as a low to moderate hazard. And remember, the environmental working group is very conservative. Even if that main ingredient, the dihydroxyacetone itself, is considered safe, a product could contain other ingredients that you may want to avoid. So, of course, it's worth reading the label. It's also smart to do a small test patch first. Even if this is a product that you've used before you got pregnant. Because remember, your skin can be more sensitive during pregnancy. One of the biggest cautions of sunless tanners applies to spray tans. The safety data covers dihydroxyacetone on the skin surface, but not inhalation. So avoiding inhaling that mist or getting it in your eyes or your mouth would be good. And the last thing to remember is that a sunless tan offers no protection from the actual sun. So even if you're using a sunless tanner, if you're going out in the sun, you should consider sunscreen. Since we're talking about your skin and the sun, we have to at least mention moles. First, most moles are completely benign. Having them, noticing them change a little bit during pregnancy doesn't mean that you have skin cancer. Please do not panic. Pregnancy naturally changes a lot of things with your skin. And as your belly or your breasts are growing, the skin there stretches, and existing moles can stretch and shift along with it. Plus, you have all these hormonal changes going on, which can darken moles and other pigmented spots. Some change is expected, and it's usually harmless. That being said, it's good to stay aware. I'll link to a helpful review. Essentially, the takeaway is that you should not automatically write off a clearly changing mole as just a pregnancy thing. If a mole is growing quickly, changing shape, changing color unevenly, if it's bleeding or it just looks different from other ones that you have a dermatologist take a look at it. Getting checked is super safe and easy during pregnancy, and if in the event a dermatologist wanted to do a biopsy, that's done with a local anesthetic and totally safe to have done while you're pregnant. The vast majority of the time, everything is fine, no reason to worry, but a quick check may be worth some peace of mind. The last topic that I want to cover is sun exposure and your baby. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends keeping your baby out of direct sunlight for the first 6 months. Now, this guidance is very cautious, so please don't panic if sunlight reaches your baby. I don't want you to keep your baby indoors for the first 6 months of their life. When you do have your baby outside, they should wear a hat and clothing that covers most of their skin, or try to keep them in the shade. For babies under 6 months, the American Academy of Pediatrics says that you can apply a small amount of sunscreen to limited areas like the face. After 6 months, you can apply it more broadly. If your baby is under a year old and they get a sunburn, you should call your pediatrician. And your pediatrician is also a really great resource for any sunscreen or sun questions. With everything that we've covered in today's episode, here's the habits that make the biggest difference. When it comes to what you wear, comfort is what matters most. Wear lightweight clothing, a hat to keep sun off your face. Those are really the simplest forms of protection. To protect your face and to slow signs of aging, dermatologists suggest using sunscreen every day on your face, even on days when you expect to be indoors. Remember, UVA light can penetrate through glass. If you have a moisturizer that has SPF or makeup that has SPF in it, that makes it very easy to keep up with. You should also apply a broad spectrum sunscreen of at least SPF 30 about 15 minutes before heading outside. How much you need really depends on how much skin is exposed. If you're wearing a swimsuit and you're going to the beach or the pool, the general guideline is about 1 ounce. So imagine roughly a shot glass full of sunscreen, and that's to cover your whole body. If you're mostly covered by clothes, of course, you need far less than that, just enough for your face, neck, hands, any other exposed skin. Also, it's very easy to miss spots. especially places like the tops of your feet and your ears, so you want to be thorough. And then regardless of what SPF you use, reapply every 2 hours and more often if you're swimming or sweating. Sun exposure when you're pregnant really comes down to balance. We're meant to spend time in the sun, and a reasonable amount supports vitamin D, your mood, your sleep. The goal is not to hide inside, but to be intentional about spending time outside. You may choose to enjoy sunlight in the mornings or late afternoon, to be in the shade when the sun is strongest. Cover up, use sunscreen on the skin that you have exposed and sunscreen on your face. If you do want some color, a sunless tanner is a far safer choice than the sun or a tanning bed. Sun exposure isn't something that I want you to be afraid of. It's just something to be thoughtful about. With everything we've covered today, there's a few situations that are worth a call to your doctor or midwife. If you get a severe sunburn, blistering, if you're showing signs of infection, you should also contact your care provider if you're running a fever after a severe sunburn. And then if you have any moles that are clearly changing, I would ask your doctor to take a look at it. Ask for a referral to a dermatologist. And then if you have any questions about vitamin D, the safety of ingredients in sunscreens or self-tanners, those are good questions to bring up with your doctor or midwife. To recap today's episode, we started with how UV light works. We talked about the difference between UVA and UVB. Went through all of the benefits of sunlight, including vitamin D, a better mood, better sleep. Went through some pregnancy-specific changes like increased sensitivity, stretch marks, and melasma that can add some additional considerations for sun exposure. We talked all about sunscreens, SPF, broad spectrum, some of the ingredients in those, and then covered sunless tanning beds, which are not recommended, and sunless tanners, and then talked about how to protect your baby from a sunburn. I'd like to thank you for tuning into the Pregnancy Podcast today. I hope that you find this episode helpful. If you have a friend who's pregnant, please share the podcast. So many listeners find the podcast through recommendations, and I appreciate you sharing it. As always, you can reach me, Vanessa, at pregnancypodcast.com. You can read the full article and see all of the resources that accompany this episode at pregnancypodcast.com/sun. Every episode I make, like this one on sun exposure, starts with hours of digging through the research so that you don't have to. Become a Pregnancy Podcast Premium member. You'll get access to every episode of the podcast, plus it's all ad-free. And that is hundreds of episodes with evidence-based information that you won't find anywhere else. Check out Pregnancy Podcast Premium at pregnancypodcast.com/premium.